Thank you. Your applause has eased my nerves. First, I want to say good evening to everyone and thank Occupy Chicago for inviting me out to be a part of tonight's panel discussion. It is a privilege to be amongst you all on this evening. I am a cousin to Emmett Till. I'm also one of the heirs to the estate of Mamie Till Mobley. I'm the founding director of the Mamie Till Mobley Memorial Foundation, which is also inclusive of the Emmett Till Players that were established in 1978 by Miss Mobley herself. Know that my voice echoes the voice of Mamie's. As a child, I grew up in the home surrounded by Emmett's grandmother, Alma Spearman, his stepfather, Jeannie Mobley, and Mamie. Growing up surrounded by such strength, courage, and commitment instilled the fire within me that is yet fueled today amidst the new Jim Crow. Just a brief history about Emmett Till. How many know the story? Do I need to really go over the story? We all know that he was a 14-year-old black boy from Chicago that traveled to Mississippi. Very reluctantly so, his mother allowed him to go. He begged her to go, as a matter of fact. Little did she know that when she waved farewell to him from that train platform, that was the last time she would ever see her son alive again. She attempted to prepare him for the culture-shocking experience he was about to be confronted with. She tried to educate him. She was a very small in stature woman, but very powerful. And she was very proper. I remember her telling the story. Now, Emmett, she told me this. Now, my mother was around. My mother is here this evening, Airickca Gordon. She grew up in the home with Emmett. I listened to the stories. My mom heard her cries. She lived in the basement apartment below her. She heard her cries as the calls came in that Emmett's body was found, as a matter of fact. But she tried to teach Emmett. She said, now, Emmett, when you go to Mississippi, and you see a white man walking down the sidewalk, you step into the street and you give him the sidewalk. She said, you say, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. But Emmett, being a rambunctious 14-year-old boy, he wanted to impress his cousins down in Mississippi, and they went to the local grocery store where Carolyn Bryant worked. She was 21 at the time. And he whistled at her. He did a wolf whistle. I can't do a wolf whistle. Can anybody do a wolf whistle for me? All right. He whistled as he was leaving the store. And when Roy Bryant, Carolyn's husband, had heard that this little nigger boy that stuttered had whistled at his wife, he decided that he and his brother-in-law, J.W. Milam, were going to just go and get that little boy from Chicago that talked funny and remove him out of the bed in the middle of the night at gunpoint with flashlights in a house full of children. He threatened Mose Wright. He said, we'll kill everyone in this house if you don't tell us which one of these are the nigger that talk funny from Chicago. He took Emmett from his bed that night, and that was the last time he was ever seen alive from our family. On September 19th, the kidnapping and murder trial began. It lasted for 5 days, an all-white, all-male jury, and it took about an hour to deliberate. And they said it only took an hour because they were thirsty and they needed to take a soda break. And then in January of 1956, Look magazine published the confessions of J.W. Milam and Roy Bryant in the Look article entitled, "The Shocking Story of a Proved Killing in Mississippi." Both Bryant and Milam detailed how they beat Emmett with a gun, shot him in his head, tied barbed wire around his neck that was connected to a gin fan and threw his body in the Tallahatchie River. They don't even tell half of it. You know there was much more done to Emmett. They were paid a reported $4,000 for their participation in that article. They were protected by a law, double jeopardy. Once acquitted, a defendant may not be retried for the same offense. Emmett wasn't the only victim of racism resulting in lynchings in the South during that time, but it was Mamie's actions and brave decision to have an open casket funeral and exposing it to the world that made the difference. She said, and I quote, "Leave the casket open. I want the world to see what they did to my boy." When Black America saw what Emmett looked like and what was done to him, they were outraged. The arousal of their consciences is what sparked the civil rights movement. Black America became angry. They were fed up with discrimination, and they wanted the same rights and privileges as whites. There needs to be a new mood shift in America today. What are we going to do about it? All the violence happening with our children is becoming an excuse for police to profile them even more. Acclaimed civil rights lawyer and scholar Michelle Alexander stated in a recent speech in New York, "There is no such thing as black boyhood in American culture, and black boys' imaginary manhood is being used as an excuse to bully and brutalize them." Trayvon Martin wasn't the first, the only, nor the last victim of racial profiling. The circumstances surrounding his murder, once again, were exposed. The injustices of the Stand Your Ground law in Florida was exposed to the world. It shed more light to the unjust killings of our youth around America as well, especially here in Chicago. Citizens all over the country took a stand for Trayvon, including our young people. Our children expressed emotion and got involved in the masses, demonstrating how tired they were of being victimized. It was a reality check for them, and they realized they are targets for police and other races hidden within society. The value of our children is diminishing daily, as demonstrated through racial profiling and violence, especially, again, gun violence in the city of Chicago. Dick Gregory stated, "Animals have more rights in America than black people because there are restrictions on when and how you can kill them. But it's always open season on us. It's open season on our children." 57 years after the murder of Emmett, who would think that we would find ourselves once again confronted with the never-healing sore of injustice? The 58th year is coming up next in the month of August. For practice of racial profiling has been in our existence for generations, and many souls are being plucked from the garden of life prematurely due to this immoral practice. Racism is ugly. Mamie maintained that the image of her son was the image of what racism would look like. And if you don't believe me, I brought a picture to show you. You can look at it afterwards. There's a picture of what she said racism looked like. That was Emmett after he had been murdered. And that's after A.A. Rayner fixed him up, and she was so pleased with what he had done. Yes, racism yet exists today, 57 years later after Emmett's death, especially through police brutality. Police officers all over the country, they're the new Ku Klux Klan. They patrol our communities and treat us like criminals. We yet see it reflected through the images of victims such as Rakia Boyd, Stephon Watts, also killed in his home, James Rivera, Alan Blueford, Howard Morgan, Ricky Bradley, Ramarley Graham, Darren Hanna, Amadou Diallo, Sean Bell, and Trayvon Martin, amongst hundreds of others across the country. We mustn't forget them. They're the victims of this war. They are the catalyst for the new civil rights movement. Our children are the catalyst for the new civil rights movement. Yes, racism yet exists. The most dangerous thing is that it's more covert now than in the 50s. We must redirect this prejudice into power. Let's promote our young people and encourage them to stand for their principles. If you oppose the past Jim Crow laws, then you should oppose the new Jim Crow laws. The new Jim Crow laws are strategically established today to enforce control, similar to that in the 50s when my cousin Emmett Till was murdered. This control is in the form of programs like Stop and Frisk in New York. and laws such as the Stand Your Ground law in Florida. When does the healing begin? It must be now, even if it is almost 57 years late. Refuse to resist. Also, take time to honor the legacy of those that sacrificed themselves for us. We have digressed since Dr. King and various other freedom fighters sacrificed their lives for our civil liberties. Dr. King was a drum major for justice. We need more drum majors for justice. And we must not forget the intrepid decision made by Mamie Till Mobley, the godmother of the civil rights movement, the nucleus, the often overlooked and under-talked about warrior who continued the struggle for civil rights and war against human wrongs. She turned her tragedy into triumph. One of her greatest legacies are the Emmett Till players, which I mentioned earlier. We were a touring troupe of youth that traveled the country with her, reciting excerpts from Dr. Martin Luther King. Wherever she went and spoke, she took one and they spoke on her behalf. I have an Emmett Till player here with me today from the new generation who is going to close me out. She's going to do Dr. King's desired eulogy to remind us the purpose of a drum major. The time has come to evaluate our humanity, to shift the paradigm of our family's tragedies to something more positive. We must never lose sight of what mankind can accomplish together in solidarity. Mamie Till Mobley fought for justice for her son until her death, and as a family, we yet fight to continue the legacy of our inheritance and know that we have never received justice for what happened to Emmett. I stand here in solidarity with you this evening to fight for justice and for peace.